Dr. Tony Agwins is Senior Lecturer, Anglo-Ruskin University, London, UK.
Thank you for joining us on Special Report today. Now, we can't talk about the inauguration of President Cyril Ramaphosa for a second term without losing sight of the fact that his party, the ANC, for the first time in 30 years, has lost its parliamentary majority. How do you think that will impact on South Africa's relations with Nigeria, possibly, and the rest of the world?
Yeah, thank you, Olumide. It's my pleasure to be on your program today. The question you have asked me is, loaded from two fronts, and I will just take them one after the other. Number one, the loss of the parliamentary majority by the African National Congress in the last South African election was not unexpected. You will agree with me that since the demise of the apartheid regime in 1994, the ANC, has been holding sway as the dominant political force in South Africa. They've dominated the political scene, and in South Africa, they have 400 seats in their National Assembly. And to have a simple majority, you need to have about 201 seats. So this election, as we find out, the ANC was only able to garner 158 seats. And the reason is there have been a lot of concern by ordinary South Africans that the country is going down the drain. Crime rate is high, unemployment is high, poverty and inequality, they are all, pervading the space there in South Africa. So that is what has happened. Then in terms of relationship with Nigeria, there is a lot. The ANC, as far as their foreign policy will be concerned now, will not be as straightforward as it used to be, because they've gone into a coalition, forming a national government with 5 other smaller political parties. So they're not going to have things as easy as they used to have it. So the dynamics has changed, and it is going to, be a case of let us watch and see what this second tenure of President Ramaphosa will look like.
Now, one of those parties in the coalition government that has been formed, which you just mentioned, happens to be the DA, the Democratic Alliance, who garnered 21% of the votes against ANC's 40%, making them the biggest opposition. It's reported that one of the bones of contention, as far as the DA is concerned, is the ANC's resolve to stand behind their position that Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza constitutes a genocide, which they disagree with. Do you think this affected voting across the board in South Africa?
Yeah, it did. It did to some extent. The Democratic Alliance, like you said, garnered 21.8%. And some researchers have said, oh, let's just give them 22%. They did very well. And apart from this Israel-Gaza crisis, there's also the issue of the National Health Service bill that President Ramaphosa passed just before the election. So there were a lot of disagreement from the political parties. Many people did not agree with some of the framework of that health bill, because they believe that the South African health system is already not in good shape. So, and they fear that President Cyril Ramaphosa was, rushing that bill because, he wanted to gain some cheap political point. So these are the main factors. Another thing that contributed to the loss of parliamentary seat for the ANC is Jacob Zuma, who formed his own political party just in January, about 6 months ago. He formed the Umkhonto weZizwe party, the MK. And it will surprise you to know that this MK party, they also got 58 seats. And if you look at the popular vote in this election, the 3 parties that came first, second, third, I've got the figures here. ANC got about 6 million votes, popular vote. The Democratic Alliance got 3 million votes. They had 87 seats. And the MK party of Jacob Zuma, that was just formed 6 months ago, got 2 million votes. So if not for the crisis in the ANC, if Jacob Zuma had not had all the corruption, the fraud allegation, and going to prison, you will agree with me that if you add 58 votes of the MK party of Jacob Zuma to that of the ANC, that would have been 208 votes. So the ANC would still be holding their parliamentary majority today. So the way this has panned out, for me, I see it as a big lesson for democracy in Africa, that when political parties, they know it all, and in Nigeria, if we are to juxtapose, we've had a similar problem when the People's Democratic Party from 1999 up to 2015, they also, became very lousy, and they were taking things for granted, and they were swept out of power. If you recall, for Nigeria, they were not talking about Nigeria today. There was a point, a chieftain of the PDP said they were going to rule Nigeria for 50 years, but that didn't happen. So it's a lesson in parliamentary and presidential democracy that you don't take things for granted in politics and governance.
Indeed. And how will this lesson be understood in the larger context of our relations, that is Nigeria's relations with South Africa? You alluded in your first answer to my first question I posed to you that it may not be business as usual, and decisions may not have to be made now with other parties involved in Ramaphosa's foreign policy. As far as Nigeria is concerned, with our history of, some have called us frenemies, friends who at times are like enemies, xenophobic past between, in the instances where Nigerians were targeted in South Africa, the high crime rate, the issue concerning our bilateral relations. We don't have an ambassador there at the moment as we speak. Maybe that will change any moment from now. Do you see things getting better, practically speaking, so that Nigerians can do business in South Africa as they do business here?
Yeah, I think, Olumide, when you look at the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa, I would say, apart from the Nelson Mandela days, from that 1994 to 99 when Mandela was president, and then to a little extent when Thabo Mbeki, the one that succeeded Mandela, was president, from the time of Jacob Zuma down to now, I would say that the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa has not been very cordial. So it may be like a smoke screen. And I don't think South Africa has been fair to Nigeria, considering what we did, how Nigeria led the struggle against apartheid. We really supported South Africa to the hilt. So the relationship, I think South Africa, this is my personal opinion, and from what I've studied and see, South Africa tend to be like competing with Nigeria on all fronts, and they don't want to accept the fact that Nigeria is perhaps a big and a solid voice on the African continent and in global affairs.